Well, hello again, everybody. This is John Norris at Trading Perspectives. As always, we have our very good friends, Sam Clement and Courtney Trust. Y'all say hello.
How's it going?
Hey, guys.
I'm doing fantastically. And Sam, you know who else is doing fantastic?
Elon Musk.
You know why he's doing fantastic?
Because he's the richest man on earth.
Oh, he finally surpassed Jeff Bezos.
He's been there. Yeah, he's like, what, double Warren Buffett now?
It's
Wow.
just some ridiculous amount of money. And Sam, if only he would just peel off 2% of his wealth, we could take care of all of the troubles in the world. Sam, Courtney, your thoughts on that?
Just wave a wand. That's all it takes is a little money, right?
Well, that's according to the UN. I mean, according to the UN, I forget, his name was Beasley, I believe, or someone over there said with the World Food Program that if only Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos would peel off 2% of their net worth, we could solve we could solve
world hunger.
World hunger.
Yes.
Sounds awesome.
Food insecurity around the world. Only $6 billion. Sam and Courtney, I don't know about that.
How cruel of them, though, to not just peel off 2% of their net worth to solve all the world's issues.
I mean, for those of you that don't know Sam, he is dripping with sarcasm. Courtney, your thoughts?
Well, I wonder what all of the Miss Universe contestants are going to say that they want for the world if we solve world hunger. I think, it's always that someone else that has more is going to solve all our problems. But I think, as y'all might or might not agree, a lot of it boils down to the actual management of the funds and the trust in who you're giving the funds to, that they are going to properly manage.
And Sam, isn't that what Musk was saying the other day?
Yeah, that was the important caveat that Elon provided. He said, I will sell Tesla stock and give you the money you're saying will essentially solve world hunger.
Which you said was $6 billion, right?
I think it was around $6 billion is what they said. I think they quoted it in terms of a percentage of his net worth. I think around 2% it was. But he said, if you can provide open source accounting on it. So if you can tell us where that money is going to go and how you're going to solve these issues with it. And it's been crickets.
Well, it has and it hasn't been. I think Beasley, actually came back to him. If I'm not mistaken, again, I think it's Beasley, came back to him and said, no, we want you to come take a look at our programs. Didn't say anything about we will show you the books, but come take a look at what we're doing, boots on the ground and whatnot. And, of course, that's not what Musk was saying.
Right.
There's no doubt that they're doing some good work. It's just I want to make sure if I'm peeling off $6 billion that I know exactly where it's going, and it's going to be used not just that's being used, but it's being used efficiently and effectively.
Right. And it's interesting because if I had a builder to build a house for me and they told me it was going to take $500,000 to build this house, I would assume they had a reason for getting to that number.
And you would even ask for it, probably.
The wood would cost this much, the tile would cost this much, appliances, what have you. They got to that number, I'm assuming, hopefully for a reason, because they added up what all they're going to need, the cost of everything, the cost of the labor, and that's how they get to that number.
Well, typically they don't put the line item in there of their percentage. Normally they calculate that into your wood cost and your electrical and anything else. It's not like in a 20% surcharge. That's
Sure.
just, they're not always transparent. And so I don't know if that's the point you're making right now, that there's kind of the lack of transparency.
Well, I'm going to tell you, the most transparent transaction I've ever had was with a gentleman by the name of Sam Frybush, all the way back in the early 1990s in Baltimore, Maryland. It was buying my wife's engagement ring. And my friend David Stefferson said, you need to go to this guy. It was up on this jeweler in Howard Street in Baltimore behind, iron bars on the windows. I was really iffy about it. I went in there. Sam was a great guy.
Thank you.
Well, of course. And Sam sat down and he showed me, okay, this is the spot price of gold. This is how much gold we're going to use. So this is my gold cost. He showed me the invoice for the precious gemstones I was going to use, and he showed me his cost. Then he goes, I'm going to double that, and that's what you're going to pay. And I went, okay.
Yeah.
And I took it, and I thought it was a reasonably fair price and what have you. So if I'm willing to do that for a wedding ring that cost back in the day, I'm not going to tell you. Let's just say it's much cheaper than what my wife thought it was. I mean,
Yes.
Easily much cheaper. I don't want to tell it, of course.
Even with doubling the actual hard cost of the...
It was still a lot less than what I thought it was going to be. If I'm willing to do that, certainly wouldn't all these people sit there and say, I want to see how my money is being spent. Why is it such an outrage for some people that Musk is even, coming back and saying, show me how you're going to spend it.
And you've seen countless of these billionaires come out and say that it's not the tax rate necessarily that I'm uncomfortable with. It's what we're using this exorbitant tax rate on. I mean, Ray Dalio was an example recently. He said, I'd be fine paying more if we knew what it was going to. And I think you see that in everyday Americans, too, people being fine with spending money. And, people in good school systems, a lot of times have a higher tax rate to pay for those good school systems. And I don't know too many people in those districts that complain about the tax they pay to fund their schools. That's not what they complain about, because they're happy that they're providing those better school systems. And I think that's a pretty consistent thing through most people. They're fine spending money if they know where it's going to and they agree on at least somewhat the things that it's going to.
And you're hitting on a really good point. I think all of us would say, okay, tax me a little bit more if all the potholes are being filled, all the kids are coming out of school and they're well educated, if everyone is above average, if you catch my drift. Mm-hmm. And, you mentioned neighborhoods here, and believe it or not, for people outside of central Alabama or Alabama in general, we actually do have some sections of our state which have fine public school systems, but most of these are relatively small, incorporated areas where the populations therein said, this is a priority of ours. I live in one of those, and both of y'all live in one of those areas where we pay above average millage. I think in my neighborhood we pay the highest millage rate in the state. However, I was able to send my kids to public school, and they both went on to college. I know that when I call the police, they're going to come to my house in a reasonable amount of time. Same for the fire department. That the parks are well taken care of. So I would say, as much as although I don't love paying taxes, I know where my money's going to with my property tax. I know that it's being used efficiently, and it's the one major tax that I pay that I have no issue paying.
Yeah, and I've heard people even, a gas tax, if we talked about that, adding on a couple cents a gallon to fix the roads. I mean, fix Highway 65 around here. I mean, there's some really awful roads, and I think a lot of people would be fine pitching in a couple extra pennies a gallon for perfect roads around here.
But I'd want to know exactly how much money that was generating and what the construction costs were and the plans were of fixing those roads and making sure that it was going to what you're paying for it. I think, I've in my past life have done some, I've had some experience with, public office, and public policy. And one thing that to me stands out is that, Birmingham or Central Alabama in general are some of the most giving people. But
you're getting all choked up about that, right?
I am just so emotional about it. They're some of the most giving people, but they do it when they know the charity in which they're giving to. They don't want the government to just say, give me a pot of money and I'll make those decisions. They want to be able to make those decisions for themselves. So it's not that they don't want to necessarily pay more taxes with us being primarily a red state. It's, from my perception, from my experience, it's that people want to have control over what their money specifically goes to, and that they can actually kind of see the benefits directly of that contribution.
Well, it's interesting that this is coming up at this point in time, understanding that the Congress in Washington's talking about tax increases, and while it's only going to hit a certain wealthy few or whatnot, there's no way that you don't have tax increases that aren't felt around. I mean, it's just, even if you tax the wealthy more, then that means they spend a little bit less, yada, 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 and going on with that. That we're talking about this because all three of us are at different stages in our lives and really sort of where we are, and yet we still worry about the same things, and that's being able to have enough money. Sam, you and Han are newly married and trying to save up some money and buy a bigger house at some point and make sure that you all have kids that they can go to the schools that they want to. And Courtney, here you are. I mean, I called you the old woman that lives in a shoe. You have, you have so many children, you don't know what to do. I mean, you're trying to raise a family, and here I am, my wife and our empty nesters. I can't believe I'm saying this, with retirement coming around the bend. I think we would all say we don't mind spending a little bit more money, like Musk said, if I knew that it was being spent correctly. And that's part of the problem why I think at least people here in this red state are pushing back on some of what's going on in Washington right now. It's like, gee whiz, I feel as though we're already paying a lot, and I'm not exactly sure where all the money's going. I'm not sure if it's being used efficiently. And Sam, you and I talked about the U.S. military. The Pentagon's books are so screwed up, they can't even conduct an audit on it.
They're legally required to, and they've basically been completely incapable of auditing themselves. I mean, they said it would require 24 separate audits and then an audit of those audits, and they've been incapable of doing it. And there's, stories of an $800 million worth of construction with no paper trail, the money spent and nowhere to see where it went or where it came from. And that's concerning to people. And it's concerning to people who are very pro-military, too, people who are fine with the amount of money. It's not the top line dollar amount that people say, well, I'm not fine spending, $700+ billion on our military this year. It's, I'm not fine spending $700 billion and not knowing where it goes. We're seeing hundreds of millions of dollars.
Millions. Even billions.
Yeah. Disappearing with really nothing to show for it. I mean, you and I have talked about looking over the PLA and the Navy there and the amount of ships they're producing, and it seems like we're not really keeping up right now. And you'd think the people that are very pro-military even and fine spending that amount of money, we would have new ships coming out essentially every quarter.
Well, and that's what's frustrating for me. It's just I think hopefully all of us would agree here that our various governments don't necessarily have a revenue problem. We've got a spending and accountability problem, and that's why obviously we live in a red state. We're going to talk when we talk about this type of stuff. We're going to have more people kind of our worldview. But I think increasingly the reason why maybe the administration has not been able to get past all these tax increases and all this massive increase in expenditures is people are starting to go, where's it going? And Courtney, I mean, here I am looking at you going, here you are, Gen Y, mother, family, all that stuff, and someone comes in and says, hey, we're going to increase taxes, we're going to solve world hunger, all that stuff. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think for me specifically, I definitely do want there to be social services. I do think that there are value adds in the government stepping up and helping people in need when it's warranted. And yes, there's always going to be a situation in which something could probably be better managed. And that's not unique to the government. I mean, that's probably also, businesses might see that as well. I think that there should be some transparency, and maybe when we're looking at our budget, they might say, well, you're eating up some of the costs for the social services because you're going to have to pay for there to be oversight. To me, I think that generally, I'm going to make that generalization here, that people would appreciate paying a little bit more for the oversight if it provided more transparency. If there was an end goal, like if we're increasing specifically because of inflation, as we've talked about before, because of we're going to need additional oversight because, hey, at some point we would want to balance our budget. Like I remember when I was younger that was actually a point of conversation when candidates would run for office. Now it's just like it's so far gone, it's not brought up. So I don't think this is unique to the government. But going back to Elon Musk, I think he's right, and I think that most people who work hard for their money would say, I'm happy. Well, they might not say this, but some people would say, I'm happy to give for people who are in need. I want to know exactly how it's beneficial.
And I think people, everyday Americans have a sour taste in their mouth after some of the bills that have passed recently. And you kind of look into the bills and you see, one, just how these bills are passed. You don't have a simple infrastructure bill.
It truly is sausage making.
I mean, it's everyone piles in what they can, and we got to get his vote, so we put another $1 billion in for a program that he wants. And you end up with so much stuff in these bills that are passed that have nothing to do with the original idea behind the bill. I mean, we gave hundreds of millions of dollars to China last year in aid for a country that already owns $1 trillion of our debt. So why are we giving them back more money, needing more debt?
I think back then at the time, really, it's taking a look at that 2020 spending bill that they came with in the fourth quarter, over $1 trillion or whatnot. We both did a Control F on the document, and just you could type in, Courtney, you could type in any crazy thing that you wanted to type in, white rhinos, just stuff like that. And there was something in the bill about it. I typed in Tibet for whatever reason. I don't know why. And there was something in the bill, something about Tibet. There's gender studies in Pakistan. We're going to spend $10 million on and what have you. I think that's where we kind of are. And I think that's where an Elon Musk kind of is.
Yeah.
And where we are in a society, we're going like, please just, I won't argue with you if you just tell me the truth.
Yeah. If we said, hey, this $1 trillion is all going to U.S. Consumers, it's U.S. employees, people that are unemployed because we shut the government down. I don't think anybody has a ton of pause with that. I mean, I'm sure some extremely fiscal conservatives might have an issue with it, but for the most part, it's going to be a lot easier to pass a bill like that than it would be, or at least to everyday Americans, than the bills that are currently passed.
I know, we don't always want to make it political, but sometimes it happens. Do you feel like, based off of y'all's experience, that a lot of this is purposely not transparent, and that based off of how individuals get elected, and now we have career politicians, that it's not in their best interest to be transparent fully?
Well, I mean, I'd say without a doubt. We've always had career politicians, but just seems to be more prevalent now. The thing is about what's interesting about politicians is we all love our congressman or congressperson, and we all hate the Congress. And that's part of the reason why we elect people, to bring the port back to our district.
Right.
And so that's part of the reason why it's not as transparent as it could be, because everyone in Washington has the same agenda, to get reelected, and in order to do so, they've got to bring home the bacon. So it's kind of like, okay, Gary Palmer, who's our representative, Lord knows, I don't know exactly what all he's doing. I'm sure we got some pet projects here that we got that has absolutely no business being here. But at the same time, building bridges in Alaska some years ago, we have that type of stuff. There's money just being thrown around hither and yon that, if we're transparent about it, we say absolutely not. The average American would be in an uproar about it. I think that's part of the way that it's set up. We have a two-year cycle popularity contest, and in order to win, you have to pander to the masses, and you have to bring home the bacon.
And you're right that that's how it's set up, and I think it's kind of the beauty and the beast. Like, there's pros and cons to it. They're set up like that for a reason. Our congressman, congresswoman is supposed to do things that benefit us. That's why we elect them. That's the whole.
Yeah.
They are representing us, and so it makes sense that they go out, one, selfishly or not, that they go out and get projects that help people that are in their district and the people that would benefit from them, and reelect them.
But you also have to remember that they have to raise a good bit of money to be able to run for election. And that a lot of times it's, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Of course it is.
So there
quid pro quo in
Yes.
Latin circles, I think.
Yeah. So, they're obviously getting pressure to, approve bills that have nothing to do with their district. But it's, so-and-so, if I approve that, they're going to give me $100,000 towards my campaign.
It's like I've joked with John about, Senator Manchin being one of the stalling blocks in this latest infrastructure bill. And I just said, I'm waiting to see what big project West Virginia gets. And because, if he's kind of on the fence, hey, let's throw a couple $100 million Virginia's way, West Virginia's way, and maybe we get him on board.
If only we were a couple $100 million.
Yeah.
Now, Courtney is actually probably the expert on actually all this, because not only did she work in Washington for a couple years, she also, and Courtney might kind of bristle at this term, she also worked for a lobbyist, for all intents and purposes, organization here in Birmingham before she came to work with us here at Oakwood. So I think she kind of knows the way the sausage is being made, and she kind of threw us a softball with that. So Courtney, I greatly appreciate you.
You're welcome, guys.
You pandering to us in this, but that's where I kind of think we are in terms of American society. We've had some elections recently that suggest we're not all one way or the other way, and truthfully, I think moving forward, Americans, whether you're right or left, just want to be told the truth, and that's what Musk was really telling the UN. Just I'll give you the money, just tell me the truth, and that's part of what all the angst that we've seen. I'm tired of being lied to by both sides.
Yeah. I agree.
And that's, Courtney, how about you? I've got Gen Z agrees with me, we're tired of being lied to. I'm Gen X, tired of being lied to. How about you?
I enjoy being lied to. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, I agree. And I also think we need to create a culture in which it's okay for someone to say that these were expectations, and unfortunately, guys, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and allow them to come back and be humble and apologize without being heavily scrutinized because it wasn't immediately exactly what they thought it was going to be. I know with children myself, there are times that I think it's going to happen one way, or that this is how it works, and it doesn't work that way, and we all need to be a little bit more flexible with allowing people to be transparent, because all you're doing is instilling that people don't want to be.
And the thing is, what's kind of funny is, had that person at the UN actually said, I've got a $6 billion shortfall in my budget this year, I need some help with this, you probably would have people not take them to task on that, might be willing to help out a little bit more, but come out and say, we're going to solve world hunger.
Yep.
permanently, and that's the implication. $6 billion. Musk called him out on his what's called baloney, and of course there was no response to it.
Yep.
Being lied to.
Yep.
There you have it. I think all generations here are agreeing, and all genders are agreeing.
Yes.
Assuming there are still only two.
As of now.
So with that, guys, we always love to hear from you all. So if you have any comments or questions or suggestions, please, by all means, please let us know. You can always drop us a line at tradingperspectives@oakworth.com, or you can leave us a review on the podcast outlet of your choice. Of course, if you're interested in reading more or hearing more of what we have to say or how we think, by all means, go to oakworth.com. Take a look underneath the Thought Leadership tab, and there's all kinds of good stuff, not just economics and podcast talk, but also some thought leadership pieces about things like financial planning and the like. Isn't that right?
That's right.
That's right. So, guys, anything else we want to talk about in terms of this topic?
That's it.
That's it.
All right. Y'all take care.